joining us in studio now as PA departs. PA hasn't been to sleep yet, I don't believe. So he gave it all he could, and now he heads home to rest. And in studio, weekly guest 9 to noon, Lavelle Neal III, thanks to Allery's Bar and Barbecue. You're home for free parking and wild shuttles. We love all of that. How you doing, Lavelle?
Doing okay. Just, bummed out over how everything transpired yesterday, and sitting there with a bunch of Vikings fans watching them go through the emotional roller coaster.
Were you at Allery's for this? Where were you?
No, I was at a place closer to my house called the Boulevard Grill and Tavern. So,
okay.
As I pointed out on Twitter, I just kind of felt bad because the season began with there was unexpected, unanticipated excellence. Then it ends so abruptly, just such an abrupt exit, and the wheels fall off, and the car crashes, and it's over. A playoff run that never really materialized. So,
is that where you kind of start as the columnist, where you're trying to tell the story on things and just how, again, bug hits windshield, 80 miles an hour, and it's over, splat. Again, 2 weeks ago, less than 10 days ago, in fact, you're talking about a football game in which you have an opportunity to have the division, have the number one seed in the NFC playoffs. You absolutely lay an egg in Detroit.
Yep.
And then 8-9 days later, you are scoring 9 points in a wild card game at a neutral site in which more than half of the fans were on your side. And the offense just unable to get out of the gates. You're setting records for all the wrong reasons with sacks and various things.
Yeah.
Is that where you start? Just kind of how different it felt, how different the conversation was just 8-9 days ago.
Well, from my own personal experience, the bad part is that it didn't feel different. It felt like I was watching the Bears play, basically.
Oh,
with the quarterback holding on to the ball too long and the offensive line not being sturdy enough and not getting points on the board when you have opportunities to. I saw a lot of Bearsness going on last night, and I was like, my goodness. It's going to detract from all the great things that Darnold did during the regular season, but the man still threw for over 4,000 yards and had a ridiculous run where he threw like 15 touchdown passes and had one pick. I mean, O'Connell pointed out after you got to look at the entire body of Sam Darnold's work and just not discard him over the last 2 weeks, but it's been ugly. 18 points in 2 games, 2 losses to the Rams, 2 losses to the Lions. That's your whole season.
Yeah.
It's tough. You wake up in the morning, I turn on my car, it's 3 below, and my brother gets in, I drop him off at work, and it's 5 below. And then I get here and I grab my water canister here and discover that it's frozen. I can't get to the water in here because it's all frozen. I'm like, man, this stinks. Day after, tough loss. Vikings fan base cast away into the frozen cornfields of Minnesota in January. Nothing to look forward to in terms of the postseason. Just blah.
Well, let me ask you about that, because it has been a Sam Darnold centric conversation from the postgame to the fan line last night. Quite a bit of it this morning. And there are many, and that's how abruptly this thing ends, to the point where we're already talking about free agents and, who's in, who's out, and just kind of the daunting task that lies ahead for the general manager with some cap space and a QB into his second year and J.J. McCarthy, but then Sam Darnold out there. Is now the right time to look at all those games, as you mentioned, the entire body of work of Sam Darnold? Or are we still kind of in the moment of these last 2 performances? Because ultimately, whether it's the 9-game win streak, it's all the touchdowns and no picks, it's the mobility, it's the terrific plays, 97 to Justin Jefferson and all of those things. Mm-hmm. In the end, the game that absolutely mattered the most, the moments that were indeed the brightest, the 2 with the most on the line, that in some ways, for a lot of people, really including myself, way more than beating the NFC South, beating Kirk Cousins when he comes here. These last 2 really mean the most to me, and we didn't get a lot out of it.
No, you didn't. And unfortunately, because it's the postseason, unfortunately, because quarterback is one of the more important positions in sports, that everybody's going to look at the quarterback. But there's other things that the Vikings could look at too.
Oh, yeah.
As to what led to their demise. People not executing. Once again, the offensive line. I mean, O'Connell said after the game that the interior of the offensive line probably needs to be addressed, upgraded. Mark Craig in the Star Tribune today, the Minnesota Star Tribune, pointed out, that middle of the offensive line, it needs to be more physical, needs to play with more force, needs to play nastier and get downhill more. So that's something they definitely have to look at. Play calling, I'm looking at some of these routes, and Darnold's dropping back, waiting for guys to get open. And I'm like, the pass rush is on him. Can he please have a hot read, please? Can we please get someone running a slant?
Yeah.
Can we throw more screens to get the pass rush off of him? Scheme could be an issue. So everybody has to, do self-evaluation and self-scouting on this one and figure out what should have been the proper way to attack the LA Rams. So, but man, it would have been nice for them to just win one game and get to the second week of the postseason.
Go to Philly.
It feels like they didn't even make the playoffs.
In some ways it does.
Yeah. So, so I feel bad for my Viking friends. I know that doesn't mean much coming from a Bears fan because we're used to disappointment all the time. But man, just going home last night, just with a sinking feeling for the fan base here. And once again, the narrative of the Vikings, Twins, Wolves, and Wild to a certain extent, the long-suffering fan bases that have been waiting for one of these teams to break through, and it still hasn't happened. And with the Vikings, this goes on. This is the third generation of Viking fans that are being cultivated here, and they're getting used to not doing anything in the postseason.
Hey, first of all, the Wolves did beat the Wizards last night, okay? Anthony Edwards put up like 20 in the fourth quarter, and you kind of cruised by the worst team in the NBA.
That game was on it was in the corner. We kept looking at it. I mean, I had to try to keep the Gopher game on because I'm trying to figure out when Ben's going to win a conference game. I'm getting nervous here that Gopher men may not win a conference game.
There's part of me that wonders, how much sand is left in that particular hourglass with the way things have gone, Lavelle.
I know. He took a bad beat during the offseason with the departures and Christie going to the NBA and dudes leaving NIL. No one was on Elijah Hawkins. He could found him out of Howard and got him to average 7 assists a game. And then now he jumps ship and goes to Lubbock. Minneapolis to Lubbock. That is kind of a step down in living situation, but he got paid to go.
Yeah.
So, and Ben's got to figure out a way through this.
As we enter the offseason for the Vikings, Lavelle, how much, we can talk about Sam Darnold all day, but just focused on the head coach. So he's going to get his contract extension. And Kevin O'Connell has put together a pretty nice resume over his first 3 seasons here as the Vikings head coach. But what areas would you say, whether it's the last 2 games, you're just thinking about this team, a 14-win team, the areas in which, because he's said it a lot, and PA kind of talked a bit about it during this last hour here, kind of the idea of, he put stuff on me, put it on me. I got to be better as a coach. That's kind of the verbiage that he was using.
Right.
And there's an element of, I can't have Sam Darnold just getting murdered in the papers and on social media all week. So I'm going to put some of this on me. But my God, was he holding on to the ball too long? He's not going to say that. He's going to put it on himself.
Correct.
What are areas you think that the head coach maybe does need to have kind of that reflection moment here? A guy that's won 13-plus games in 2 seasons. He's 0-2 in the postseason. The way these games have transpired, specifically on the back end, has not been good enough. And as much as we love JJ and the explosive plays, sometimes just the ability to get out alive and close the door on teams, that has been lacking. Like, what kind of things pop in your head when you're like, how can Kevin O'Connell, as good as this team has produced, at least in the regular season, how does that get better?
Well, you got to look at the scheme. Yes, personnel. Darnold hold on to the ball too long. offensive line not being sturdy, but you also have to look at scheme. Because for 2 consecutive games, it was a party in the backfield. It was guys meet me at the quarterback, and it happened against quality teams, the Lions and the Rams. Is there something else he needs to dial up to, once again, get him off the pass rush? Are there shorter routes that need to be drawn up?
Right.
Is there something tricky? A screenplay, quick hitters, receiver screen, although I hate those because the Bears call 10 of them every game.
Keeps your guy from getting sacked 7 times, though.
Yeah, what can he do to keep his quarterback upright and not eating dirt all the time? Once again, it could be in this day and age of collaboration. You could look at different ways to get after this. So, and as we head to one of the more consequential off seasons in Vikings history, I would argue that personnel could be just as big of a factor as scheme.
Well, the moment last night, I'm not excusing it. It's not acceptable. But if you're watching the game, the Vikings get that touchdown to TJ Hawkinson, and it's like a 2-minute drive. There's 5 minutes left in the third.
Yeah.
Bad 2-point play doesn't convert, but it's 27-9. So it's still a 3-possession game. I get that.
Run it down, play at the end of the third quarter.
Well, that's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Because you do force the Rams to punt on their ensuing possession, and you get the ball back, albeit you start at your own 4 with 2 minutes left in the third. You run Aaron Jones, short pass to Addison. You run while Darnold has to scramble for 2. Mm-hmm. Then it's Aaron Jones with no gain, and you mentioned it. There's nearly 40 seconds left, just under, in fact. And they let that roll down. And lack of urgency, is there in some ways mentally where the coach is just like, I can't win with this guy, or this isn't going to work, or I don't have the answers? The lack of urgency, the lack of push and fight at the end of the third into the early fourth, that was kind of like even me as a lifelong fan, since I can remember going to training camp in Cato as like a 6 or 7-year-old. That was the moment in the game where I'm like, oh, you guys, is this a playoff game, or are you just trying to test out the offense in the later stages of a preseason exhibition? What is this? I had become resigned to the idea of them losing, but watching that transpire end of third into the fourth actually angered me a bit at how that went.
Are you suggesting that was a vote of no confidence in the quarterback and how he was playing? That KOC did not want to run another play and just kind of take the quarter break to kind of reset, regroup, and try to come up with a battle plan for the fourth? In
some ways, it felt like that.
Yeah. I still ran a play. I mean, even if it's a pitch to Aaron Jones or something, you got to get positive yardage, because at that point, the clock is your enemy now. You're down to the final 15, 16 minutes of the game, and you need multiple scores. So every second's precious. So running the 40 seconds down, I was against. I did not like that. I don't know if he was asked about it after the game, but I'd like to kind of hear from him what was the train of thought or the thinking, or did he feel like his offensive line needed a breather? I don't know.
Well, he's been more vocal about that. Yeah. Really over the last 2-3 weeks now. It was more poignant, or at least as specific as he had been all year. Mm-hmm. Sam got hit too much. That's what he said after the Lions game. And so into this one, what does that look like? And then we're talking about Sam's footwork and decision-making and all those trips in the red zone in the Lions game. So these, as similar as these games felt like hope-wise, they're actually a little bit different. I mean, you were only in the red zone once last night. And it was actually, I think it was like a 3rd and long play. They didn't convert, and they kicked a field goal. So, they were different but similar in the regard that Sam's footwork was a problem. His decision-making was a problem, all of those things, but the consistency with the coach, and he mentioned it again
last night. His passes were off again, too.
His passes were off again. He's throwing it behind Jalen Naylor.
Oh, man, did you see that?
Oh, and even the easy ones, hey, guys, Kevin O'Connell, can you throw some more screens? How about some quick stuff? He was throwing quick wide receiver screens and dumping it off. Even those were not accurate and crisp and confident. So did the QB lose confidence in himself? At some point, did the head coach just mentally go,
Did that affect the play calling?
We are bleeped. And how much, how much does that impact? At some point, what can the head coach do? And so on paper, I'm thinking, I can't see a moment where he pivoted Where's that moment where you could tell Kevin O'Connell was really trying something different? We're allergic to running the ball. We know that already, and we're trying to establish the run down 3 scores at the end of the third quarter in a playoff game. But was there a moment he pivoted? I didn't see it. But that's kind of how it felt in that stage is just the QB didn't have it. And I think the coach started to kind of show that he was in agreement on that fact.
Yeah, I think KLC he's going to end up seeing it clearly eventually. He's going to look at it from all sides. But I think in the end, he's going to look at himself and go, what could I have done? He says, I needed to figure out a way to slow the game down for Sam, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to come to that conclusion. I needed to do something to slow the game down.
But I wonder what that looks like, because ultimately, there's been a lot of talk, again, the 9 sacks, and more than half of them, I mean, you needed both hands to count the real-time seconds that Sam had in the pocket before ultimately the pressure came.
Yeah.
So he's holding on to the ball too long. But there was the 4th down play at midfield, and I would have rather at that stage just punt it. I know you're down 14 at the time, but you're getting the ball to start the third quarter. Punt this, and he ends up taking that sack, and then it's first down, I think, inside our 40, gets TD to the tight end, and then now it's 24-3 at the break.
I'm sorry, all the sacks are a blur to me now. They all kind of group together in one big...
Oh, well, they're just ugly. I mean, it's all ugliness. 9 sacks.
9
sacks.
Yeah,
9 sacks. But just even moments like that 4th and 2, I think Justin Jefferson gets tangled up on a short route. He clearly was the first read, falls down. So you even have stuff like that in those spots over the course of games. So, I'm not trying to excuse the head coach because I'm in on the pivot. I'm in on the adjustment that I don't feel was taking place. Head coach has to have answers, and it can't just be that the QB didn't have it and he turned into a pumpkin. It's got to be something else. But there were also just kind of those moments last couple of games where even the obvious ones, the easy ones weren't easy enough for our guy.
No, they weren't. And yeah, you're right. The 2 games kind of are different and the same at the same time because this last night's game didn't see too many visits into the red zone for the purple.
No, just the one.
Yeah, unlike the Lions game. So it's going to sting, and KLC's probably looking back at film right now, trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm sure Sam's replaying the game in his mind, trying to figure out what he could have done differently.
Yeah.
And that's all we got left, and it's just going to be weeks and weeks and weeks of going over the same old stuff, the same old things, trying to find out what could have been done differently. In the end, it's usually more than just one person.
Absolutely. That's Lavelle Neal III. It's Nordo for PA. And when we return, I have some more Vikings bits to get into with the columnist as we lament and we emote on a Tuesday after a wild card loss. The Vikings taking the L to the Rams 27-9 last night in Arizona. You're listening to 9 to Noon, but before I pause, check this out. The Fan wants to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword bonus. You might win $1,000. That would feel like a bonus with the keyword bonus at KFAN.com.
Love the show. You know what? A little bit of a letdown, but we were far ahead of where we thought we were going to be. Just a thought. Do you think maybe KC thought at that point, you know what? I don't want to take money out of Sam's pocket, make him look worse than he is. Just a thought. Maybe give him a break. Anyhow, Skull, still a fan.
Thanks for the talkbacks. Free iHeartRadio app. You just hit that microphone, give us up to your best 30 seconds, and I screen them for any potential FCC violations. Kind of doing double duty with the board and all of that today, but that's all good. Nordo for PA, the final hour, and Lavelle Neal III in studio. Let's hit another talkback and resume this conversation.
Hey, fellas. Yep, sure sucks the way this season ended, but don't lose sight of the fact that we're ahead of schedule. This was the 3rd season for KOC. He inherited quite a dumpster fire.
Jeez.
What schedule?
We've got a lot of good things going for us as long as we stick with JJ and use that extra cap space on the interior of our O-line and our D-backs like we should.
Yeah.
This team is on a good path. It's a bummer the way it ended, but there's good things ahead.
The competitive rebuild, Lavelle.
Yes.
The competitive rebuild. That's the schedule.
Yeah, we're supposed to win right now. Yeah, we're supposed to never take a step back.
See, I've been whether it was Charge, and I've seen several text messages and such that vehemently disagree with me. But I think we mean the same thing. We're just saying it different ways. Because the way that I look at it is, in the 3 years with Kevin O'Connell, I think that the 13 wins in 2022, I think this season, are both terrific examples, and we probably would have seen some semblance of it. They stumbled out of the gates. They're turning the ball over to beat the band all year last year, and then Kirk tears his Achilles. So it's tough to say how that would have been different if Kirk was healthy. But I think this is a head coach, and this is a team that has vastly overperformed an under-talented roster. And I know we have Justin Jefferson. I know we have Jordan Addison. And when we try once in a while, we actually can even utilize a fairly talented TJ Hawkinson. But in the end, ultimately, every time you hear about this team, it ultimately, and I enjoyed those talkbacks, thank you so much, it also, then there is, well, yeah, this interior offensive line is awful. Yes, the interior of the defensive line, we haven't had a 3 technique that can sack a freaking QB since Tom Johnson in like 2017. Oh, by the way, our cornerbacks, what we were able to do or not do with that group, slowly playing more man throughout the year. But ultimately, it was a lot of hands-off activity because we were worried about maybe getting beaten on the back end. So no, he didn't overperform with this under-talented roster, but oh yeah, here are 3 super vital areas in which we are massively deficient from a personnel standpoint. That's what I'm getting at.
I hear. I think it was a good roster. They had 6 Pro Bowlers, right? Was it 6?
I think it was 6, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a reflection of a talented team. I don't know if he over-delivered or not. I just think he did a really solid coaching job in getting things married up, and Brian Flores worked wonders with the defense. Here's the thing, too. The big key for this year was that just from talking with Andy McPhail about roster construction and building teams, you do not want to give a coach or a manager a player he does not want. And that happened 2 years ago when Kwesi foisted Marcus Davenport on the defense because there's concerns that he was not going to be able to stay on the field, and those concerns were verified immediately. So this offseason,
I think he was good for the Vikings in like that one full game he played. I think it was Carolina. He had like 3 sacks or something like that.
This offseason, B-Flow had a list of guys that he wanted Kwesi to go get, and Kwesi got those guys. Kwesi ended up signing them. He gets credit for that, but B-Flow, I think, was a little more proactive in how he wanted the defense to look. He knew Van Ginkel from Miami, and he knew some of the other guys they brought in. So, I think it was a solid roster that they pretty much got as much out of it as possible. Now you can never not keep building in the trenches. So yeah, interior offensive line, 3 technique nose tackles, sure. But the reason I say this is one of the more consequential off seasons is because of the number of players who are coming out of a contract that they've got to account for.
Yeah.
Especially we don't know what the secondary is going to look like next year.
Isn't that crazy?
I know, and they've got to rebuild a secondary. They got to give Harry all the time he needs to make a decision on whether or not he wants to come back. Yep, you do have the Swiss Army knife in Josh Metellus. Metellus.
But we don't have Cam Bynum. We don't have Shaq Griffin. We don't have Stephon Gilmore. And in some ways, talking about this, Gilmore at this stage of his career, kind of a gun for hire, had his moments, certainly. Yeah. Is this potentially addition by subtraction? I mean, the way that it's really had to go since, and the measured spending spree that you were talking about with Van Ginkel and Grenard, absolutely, there's talent on this team, but then you're also filling it out like, can Jerry Tillery find that first-round draft stock from earlier in his career and bounce back after mediocre days with the Chargers and a little bit of activity with the Raiders? Like in Camu Grugier-Hill, who actually had to try to not block that punt last night.
I don't know how he did get a hand on that ball.
Oh, my goodness, when it's bad, it's bad. But you're right. And then Byron Murphy Jr. led the team in interceptions. Again, that's the abruptness of this.
Now, the Vikings tried to sign him last offseason, right? And he bet on himself, right? Is that
possible?
Yeah.
I guess I'd have to go back. I got so many articles in my face every single day that I have forgotten about.
They're going to have cap space, but
that gets soaked up pretty quickly when you think about, if you're going to go after a badass free agent guard. I haven't even looked at him yet. That's the thing. 9 to noon, Lavelle. You know how we operate. We're not sitting around looking at free agency. We're not sitting around thinking about March. We're fascinated by the days right in front of us. and then like a truck, you just get run over. And now suddenly we're talking about, well, I wonder if we can afford Byron Murphy because of those 6 picks and the awesome year that he had.
Right. Now, here's the thing, too. Teams ain't letting go good offensive linemen.
No.
Not
typically.
They're not. They're going to figure out a way to keep those guys. So that market's going to be tough to navigate from the start. That means the mediocre guys are going to get overpaid. And you got to figure out, which one of those you actually want and how many of those you want. So it's easier said than done about strengthening that offensive line. College football does not develop enough offensive linemen who can adapt to NFL offenses.
Yeah.
So that's always a challenge every year. So
it's one of those things too. I mean, free agents can hit and they can hit well, and we have examples of them on this team where Cashman, as good as he was, and Van Ginkel, and I thought Jonathan Grenard, just the spark and the speed that he plays with was awesome. Mm-hmm. However, like you said, you always got to pay more later than you do when you just draft effectively. You know what I mean? So,
like the Los Angeles Rams, Les Snead is a master because all these picks are like low, like Puka Nacua was like the 177th overall draft pick.
Yeah.
All right. We all know about Jarrett Verse, who, by the way, the Vikings passed up to take your boy Dallas Turner.
I knew you would freaking mention that.
And then the other guy, is it Fisk or Fiske?
Braden Fisk.
He was what, a 5th round pick? No.
I thought he was second
round pick.
I think so.
Les Snead's hitting on all these picks, man.
On their 3rd rounders is starting safety. I think they have a 4th or 5th round DB that
center's
plays
like a 5th round pick.
Yeah, he's like 6th round.
And let's not forget,
that's 3 years removed, by the way, from Les Snead at a Super Bowl parade saying bleep them picks. Oh. Well, now he's got his picks back, and he's just hitting home runs with all of them.
We were mocking and ridiculing the Rams for not caring about draft picks.
Yep.
But they didn't have any problems trading really high picks, but they hit on their lower picks.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, it was just a couple years ago, Aaron Darnold, who may be the best defensive lineman of our generation, was still playing.
That's right.
And he retires, and they're still effective.
Yeah. And while Kobe Turner, I think second year maybe, Kobe Turner's, he's no Aaron Donald, but he's certainly making plays. I mean, we got guys like Neville Gallimore, just a retread. He was drafted highly with Dallas or mid-rounds with Dallas, maybe.
I didn't know Carnell Lake's kid was in the league.
He had, I think he's got 4 sacks in his entire career. Neville Gallimore had a sack and a half last night. When it's bad, it's bad. Let me do this. I do want to, I want to pause at some point and then we'll have one segment left. If I can, Lavelle, around the corner, I do want to talk about your team a bit, and maybe the connection, of course, is Brian Flores being floated in head coaching circles, your team in transition, my favorite team now potentially in transition with some of those bits. I want to see where your head's at on the Bears, where your head's at on Flores, Ben Johnson, and all of that. Can we do that next segment?
Sure.
Absolutely. That's Lavelle Neal III. Final segment, 9 to noon, is next on the Fan.
I can't wait until tomorrow.
Final segment, 9 to noon. PA in from 9 to 11. Brian McKnight, it was one last cry. Season is over. And now we sift through the ashes. Something, sadly, that we're quite familiar with. And it felt right, thanks to Allery's Bar and Barbecue, that we would share with our Bears-loving fan, Lavelle. Because I got as soon as you jumped in studio, Lavelle, I instantly got 2 text messages. It's good to hear Lavelle's voice. Makes me feel better about being a Vikings fan. I don't know what that means. But that's what the sentiment was. But there is a connection between us potentially, as now interviews and such things. I know that your team's looking for a new head coach, and our defensive coordinator's name didn't even get sniffed out for an interview a year ago, has now reemerged to the surface of these sorts of discussions. What do you think about your Bears? What do you think about Brian Flores? And just kind of, let it all out, Lavelle.
The Bears are talking to everybody right now. I think their interview list is up to 16 or 17.
Has McCarthy been there yet? He was blocked by Jerry.
He's free to talk to him now.
Now he's open for business.
Yep. That also includes Iowa State head coach Matt Campbell is supposed to get an interview.
Okay.
And apparently the Bears have possibly already reached out to the Steelers about Mike Tomlin to see if Tomlin's going to be allowed to let go. He has a no trade clause in his contract, which is weird for a coach.
Well, somebody that you and I both know exceptionally well, and he's incredibly generous, and we love him. He called me 7 times within the last 36 hours to tell me that he thinks that Mike Tomlin's going to get traded to the Bears. You know exactly who I'm talking about.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
You've heard it from him too.
Yeah, I heard the same thing too. He's well connected. That person we were talking about is very well connected in Chicago. That'd be interesting. Maybe Tomlin needs a change of scenery. But if it's Flores, if it's Tomlin, they got to come in. I got to know who is going to be on their coaching staff.
Yeah.
What the plan is
the OC matters
to get Caleb Williams to the next level and further his development as a quarterback. And also means Ryan Poles, the slightly embattled general manager, needs to get offensive linemen in. So the Bears and the Vikings may be chasing the same offensive linemen either via the draft or free agency during the offseason, because the Bears the interior offensive linemen as well. So
how much do you think, because we've talked a bit about it with the Lions, if Brian Flores was to get a head coaching opportunity, ultimately, just out of respect for him, like, go take it. Absolutely. But now I'm still back here loving my favorite team going, how's this thing going to look? How much do you think that impacts things? I know that behind the scenes that Flores has had a significant voice, and rightfully so, in terms of certain personnel, and so, hey, check this guy out. This is somebody maybe that I love. This type of player is something I need for my defense. He gets a couple of years of being the maestro and the puppeteer of sorts in that regard. Now you take that out of the mix. That changes things a bit into 2025.
Well, you have to look at his staff, too. One of the defensive coaches, Durante Jones, is highly thought of.
Yeah, the DB coach.
Yeah, so if he does not go with Flores to any new destination, he could be the guy stepping into the Flores role next year. And that would help with continuity in terms of system and scheme, I believe. So, but like I said, Durante is highly thought of. So that may not be the worst thing in the world. Flores has got I think he would have to get rid of that lawsuit against the league, I would imagine, if you want to actually take another job.
PA and I were talking. Still feels like a coin flip that he returns. But the fact that there was no conversation about it a year ago.
He's in the cycle now.
And now you're hearing it very much in the cycle. And he did have success with the Dolphins as a head coach before kind of the bottom fell out on that. Similar situation, a team that struggled to get great quarterback play. And McDaniel's come in there and he's working with two of the best that he can. But, the situation remains here. Can J.J. McCarthy, that optimism that you guys felt in the spring and the summertime, at some point, we're going to emotionally turn the page, Lavelle, and it's JJ season, right?
Yeah, I'm pro JJ, as I said weeks ago, or right before the draft. I was pro McCarthy. I wasn't sure if the Vikings are going to have a path to him, but it only takes one team to do something stupid, and that team was the Atlanta Falcons when they selected Michael Penix Jr., and that paved the way for JJ McCarthy to be selected by the Vikings.
Well, I
just saw JJ in the locker room late last week. The dude looks like he's 14. I was like, that's JJ McCarthy? Are you kidding me? He really looks young.
Well, I'm curious just because of the knee situation. You think he maybe lost weight? Just the inability to train and do some of the things. He actually looked more slender later in the season than he did even in training camp.
It's possible, but he's got time to regain that strength now as long as he's making progress. I know he had to have another procedure or something like that, right? A few months ago.
Maybe an injection of some sort.
Yeah. So, but he's a tough kid. He's a hockey player. He's a good fit for this market. And I can easily see. I think I agree with. I listened to the show earlier when Paul thought the quarterback room would have JJ and Daniel Jones in it next year. And I agree with that. I can see that scenario working out.
That feels like, and Sam, we kind of snarkily in some ways, but. You feel for the situation, tremendous year. He cost himself tens of millions of dollars the last 2 weeks.
He probably will. That won't stop the Raiders from signing him.
You don't think so?
No, I don't. Because I don't know. Are they fired him about Aiden O'Connell? I don't think they are, right?
Well, now that Tom Brady's part owner, how much of a say does the Great One have to say? The NFL's version of the Great One get to say in terms of who's throwing the ball there.
I was reading speculation that Brady will have some say-so, but that was just speculation. So I have no connections with the Raiders or people in the NFL who could point me in the right direction on that one. I would imagine Brady's going to express his opinion, which could be a good thing or absolutely horrible thing.
Well, how much of the team does he own? I mean, if you know,
I heard 5%.
Okay, well, is 5% and all those rings, is that enough to be able to have a say? I mean, if I'm the general manager of the Raiders, I might, absolutely, I'll sit down and have lunch. But I kind of, I don't need it. Just because you can do doesn't mean you can coach. Doesn't mean you can organize. I don't need Tom Brady in my office every other day telling me what he thinks just because he owns a nickel of the franchise.
I'm not an egomaniac. I would, if Brady is a 5% owner of the franchise I'm a GM for, I will allow him to sit in the room and join in the discussions.
Well, you have to because he's part owner. No, I get that.
In this day and age, we are in collaborative times.
We are collaborating.
But the one guy, me, would have to make the final decision.
Thanks for hanging out with me, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to help PA get to the crib and put his feet up and mellow out after an emotional time and a late night flight, early morning flight, and
very emotional.
And the Viking fans, there will be better days ahead. Trust me, I'm a Bears fan.
And that's Lavelle Neal III, Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. The columnist, brought to you by Allery's Bar and Barbecue, home of free parking and wild shuttles. Next up, the program is around the corner, and you are indeed listening to The Fan. Have a terrific afternoon.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.